Michelle, war on, peace deal on, hard to make sense. What is going on, and what are you folks hearing as to, is there really a peace deal in place?
Well, you're right, Carol, that we've kind of been in this mode for some time, and you're right to feel like this is familiar. You know, Washington has a way of recycling tropes in times like these, and Groundhog Day is certainly one that we continue to draw back on. But for good reason. We've been here before where the president is pushing this sort of dual track of semi-contradictory statements where he's saying, you know, yes, there will be more strikes on Iran, and then he says at the same time the negotiations are going well and a final deal is near. That's where we were at this morning. But with this semi-reversal, at least on the strikes front, we're kind of in a similar place where we just don't know yet what will happen next and how true to reality his rhetoric is at this point. So one thing I would caution, you read out in his post, of course, that list of countries that he says have agreed to some framework of a deal and in concepts and in practice. That list has a notable omission, and that is Iran. So we've been here before, but analysts, especially those who have studied Iran, or Iranian historians, Persian Empire historians, will tell you this is a civilization, this is a current government and regime that likes to slow walk these things, is fine waiting it out as the president kind of scrambles to try to finish something that he started on a timeline that has gone long past what they initially said it would take.
And I've just got to say, Michelle, I've got a Bloomberg terminal user actually messaging me and talking about a source, and I want to confirm it, but saying Iran and Israel are both denying existence of any agreement. I am looking, do we have, and that's what I'm thinking about, Tim, like, do we have any confirmation from Israel or Iran or anybody else that this deal is real?
Well, you might know better than I, Carol, if you've got the terminal right in front of you, because since I've been sitting here, something may have happened, and we're right to be following. You know, Israel, I'm sure, is very quick to point out whether or not they feel something has ended.
Again, I have nothing confirmed. I'm just saying, like a Bloomberg terminal user who, you know, folks in the market are obviously pulling into different news sources as well. So it's just
and it's a good time also to urge caution, you know, on the sourcing on that, because as you know, throughout the war, we've been dealing with a lot of Iranian state media headlines that have to be kind of verified and also checked against what Iranian officials might say, and then of course ultimately how they might act in response to you know, various developments on this side. And at the same time, you know, we've heard conflicting signals both from the president but from other administration officials as we all try to work out what is actually happening in those talks. And that's a whole other subject too, by the way, that we're going to have to tackle in the coming days if we are actually close to a deal, is that there are a lot of parties involved, and we listed many of them in that post, you know, that Trump just put out, and many of them have varying interests in touting a deal is nigh or saying it's not nigh, and things need to be worked out on various sticking points that have persisted throughout the conflict.
Michelle, speaking of sticking points, the nuclear issue, that's the sticking point. I mean, that is the entire reason the president laid out for us earlier this year about why he decided to go to war with Iran. Right. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, is what the president says. What about the enrichment of uranium? Do we have any details at this point about what a deal looks like that, again, like the president says, has been agreed to, you know, by all these parties when it comes to nuclear enrichment?
Well, Tim, I think you're right to point out that that's at the core of this and is maybe the major sticking point of about 4 or 5 major sticking points. We just don't know at this point what might be confirmed, where they might be coming a little bit closer together on the idea of, you know, removing the highly enriched uranium. If you do remove it, where would it go? The U.S. and Iran have disagreed on that point. Iran at times has said they'd be okay with sending it to China or Russia. The U.S. says, no, that's a deal breaker. So you know, either the U.S. would take it or they would send it to some other site that would be acceptable. That's still very much in the air and unclear where they have landed in those negotiations. But those negotiations themselves have been complicated by a number of factors, including the fact that you've got the main decision maker in Iran, the Ayatollah, holed up in an undisclosed location, you know, in a secure location in the north of the country that's very hard to reach, and perhaps is taking, as U.S. officials have said, need many days to get messages back and forth, even through the intermediaries like Pakistan, like Qatar, who have been helping out in these negotiations. So there's a lot of complicated back and forth at work, and so we do need to kind of take every message from either side with caution, and just kind of verify whether or not both sides have actually agreed to any one of many sticking points still to be worked out.
Yeah, I mean, who's doing the negotiating at this point? I thought what was interesting, there was a story earlier on the Bloomberg about senior national security officials from the United Arab Emirates and Iran holding a face-to-face meeting for the first time since the start of the U.S.-Israeli war against Tehran, according to people with knowledge of the situation. And I am curious, where's the U.S. position in all of this? Like, who's making this happen? Because there's so much at stake for so many different entities, if you will, for Iran, for the United States, for Israel, for the Middle East region. I'm just not quite where to figure out, like, who's in charge here and who's driving it.
Well, it's a great question, Carol, and I think one thing we can say for sure is that things have moved beyond where they were in that first round of direct negotiations that took place in Islamabad, however many weeks ago that was. But it seems that, at least on the U.S. side, that they're taking a different tack, that Trump, noticeably and publicly grew impatient with Iran and, has been unwilling to send the likes of Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner to any other location to interact with them. But at the same time, Vice President Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio have been involved. On the other side, we're still unsure exactly how those negotiations are happening, but we do know it is a complex set of people involved on the Iranian side. And then, of course, you have other major players, aside from those playing intermediary, like we mentioned, Qatar and Pakistan. You do have, Israel foremost as one party that has been very vocal in all of this and certainly plays a big role in how this thing finishes, when it finishes. And they, by the way, yesterday were reiterating that the Iran war is far from over. So it's kind of cutting against the messaging that Trump wants to promote of a final deal being near, peace being at hand, and no need, at least for now, for those additional strikes tonight.